here we are, chapter 5, and the title of chapter 5 is Meeting with the God Woman in the Garden. And we pick up where the prince, who's fell into poverty and into service for the cook of another king. This is, if you recall, kind of the representation of us conforming to society in a way that, let's say, it doesn't meet our destiny. That we pick a job or a career and just kind of muscle our way through monotonously. The prince carries water and wood and cleans out ashes, but that really represents us doing the mundane tasks to get from one day to another, looking for the weekend type of thing. So, of course, he's called to service into the king's court, if you recall, and he refuses to take his hat off because he doesn't want to show his strength. He doesn't want to show his gold hair, and doesn't want to reveal who he really is, and that offends the king. And the king is the structure of society. It could be the peer pressure of friends, or trying to conform to a certain persona, and so you're hiding who you really are. And so the king kicks him out of the castle. And essentially, he orders the cook to kick him out, and the cook puts him to service as a gardener. And that's where we'll pick up. The king called up the cook and scolded him, and demanded how he could have taken in such a boy into his service, and he told him to fire the boy and get him out of the castle. The cook, however, had pity on the youngster and exchanged him for a gardener boy. Now the boy had set out plants in the garden and watered them, chopped them, hoed them, and spade them, and let the wind and bad weather do what they wish. So this is the same thing as when he was working for the cook. He's doing these menial tasks. The bad weather and the wind kind of represents that you're not on firm ground. You can get pushed around by bad things in life. You may lose a relationship, or lose a family member, or lose a job, and kind of just destroys your identity and who you are and what you're about, because you're not really taken up to who you are. You're still doing these menial tasks. You're still operating in the world in autopilot. So now the boy had set out the plants in the garden and watered them and chopped them and hoed them and spade them and let the wind and the bad weather do as they wish. But one summer, when he was working in the garden by himself, he got so hot that he pulled off his head covering, and in the breeze he could let his head cool. And when the sun touched his head, his hair glowed and blazed out so brightly that the beams of sunlight went all the way into the bedroom of the king's daughter. She leapt to see what it could be. She spied the boy outside and called him, "Boy, bring me a batch of flowers." He quickly put his hat back on, picked up some wildflowers, tied them in a bunch, and as they started up the stairs with him, the gardener met him and said, "What are you doing bringing the king's daughter such ordinary flowers? Get moving and pick up another bouquet, the best that we have and the most beautiful." No, the boy answered. "The wildflowers are the strongest fragrance, and they will please her more." So we see the introduction of the king's daughter, and what this represents is the awakening of the true self. It's the catalyst, so to speak, into the discovery or initiation into the oneself. And in the story of the Lion King, for instance, the child cub goes out and acts like a fool, finds some friends, and doesn't behave like the true king that he is. And it isn't until the female cub comes out and searches that he wakes up and realizes that he has to return back to the kingdom and defeat Scar. And so this is the same archetype. It's the awakening of the self into the true identity. So the boy walked into the room of the king's daughter and said, she said, "Take off your hat. It isn't proper for you to wear in my presence." Again, he's acting upon the call into oneself, but he's still not willing to show who he really is. He's not really, he's not confident enough and to just rely on who he was born to be and the personality that he is, if that makes sense. He replied, I don't care to do that. I have mange, you know. And of course, he's lying, you know. So she, however, grabbed his hat and yanked it off, and his golden hair tumbled down to his shoulders, and it was so magnificent to look at. He started out the door to run, but she had held him by the arm and gave him a handful of coins. He took them and left, and he put no stock into them. In fact, he brought the coins to the gardener and said, I'm giving these to your children so that they can play with. The next day, the king's daughter again called the boy into her and told him to bring more wild flowers. When he walked in with them, she reached in a little hat and would have torn it away, but he held it on with both hands. Once more that she gave him a handful of gold coins, but he refused to keep them and gave them to the gardener's children as plaything. The third day, the same thing went on. She couldn't manage to get the hat off, and he wouldn't accept the gold coins. So the gold coins represent, again, it's gold. You see the gold ball, the gold hair, the gold coins. So he's still not accepting who he is. He's still not going. He's playing with it a little bit because he refuses to get the traditional bouquet of flowers that the gardener suggests. He's bringing the strongest fragrance. So he's awakening the inner self and the catalyst into who he is, but he's still fighting it. Now, for a quick moment, reflect upon yourself and think about this. How many opportunities have come up where a potential dream, a desire, or something has sprung up, and fear has stopped you from acting into the world and taking that chance? And there's all kinds of reasons why. We have responsibilities. We have, car payments and mortgages and children and all those things, and they'll stop us from pursuing what we really are. And we continue to put on the persona of something else or somebody else because we're trying to protect ourselves from the risk of failure, the risk of not fitting into the world. But the real problem, you can see this in the story, is that he's giving the coins away as playthings. You think, why can't you invest that? Couldn't you just use the coins to gain access so you can go back home or something along those lines? It doesn't seem logical, right? He doesn't see the value in what is presented, and most times we don't see what the value of our destiny as it lays in front of us, and we miss those opportunities. And so I guess the way we'll end this chapter is that we have to pursue who we really are. And the world is going to reflect onto us all kinds of suffering and fear and ridicule, but by accepting who we are, we get to choose the battlefield, so to speak, and that in itself has a meaningful path, because at least we have the option of saying, this is who I am, and I'm going to confront it the way I choose to be, and that's something a lot stronger. You think you'll being in the world who you are is going to be a lot better than being in the world of somebody you're not. Let's say that. So, chapter 6 next week, and I hope to see you then. All right.